Welcome to another episode of First Light, an original science fiction short story compilation written and narrated by Scott McGowan. This episode contains frank discussion of sexual activity and themes of consent. No explicit content is depicted. These episodes should not be redistributed without express permission. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Feedback. He didn't stir much when she wordlessly slid into the bed next to him. The action wasn't what was out of the ordinary, rather the timing. Dawn did not need to sleep, instead requiring only a few hours for maintenance tasks, so she would often stay up much later than he did. She would stand idly in a corner of the room facing the door, the whirring of her internal motors providing a gentle white noise, or sit on the edge of the bed quietly observing his breathing for irregularities, or she would leave the room altogether. He thought it was cute, in a way, how she would act the part of a sentinel. Eventually, she would enter a recovery state and would sleep for the night. For the first while they were living together, she would do so standing upright, and her limbs and head would go limp as she started her tasks, her eyes still dimly lit. Rubyn told her it creeped him out, and while she wasn't completely sure why that was, she adjusted the following night by laying down on the floor next to the bed. He didn't notice this adjustment until the next morning. Turning over to the empty side of the bed, when the artificial light from the bedroom porthole reflected against her new steel skin, he was briefly taken by the phenomenon. Here she was, an artisan work in every sense, illuminated by the light of a human-made sun. It felt like a testament to the creative spirit, human hands involved in all aspects of the scene down to the finest detail. In that moment, she was Eve, and the light was God, and she was sleeping on the floor. It might not have bothered him if he had not already spent so much time with her. While her living here was out of necessity, she simply had nowhere else to go, he was beginning to enjoy having her around. It was nice to have someone to talk to every day, even if she would inevitably start asking a lot of clarifying questions. It hadn't occurred to Rubyn just how many common phrases made no logical sense when broken down. Something like, "You hungry?" meant as an invitation to come and eat, made perfect sense to him until Dawn pointed out that, no, she was never hungry. Sometimes he would explain the meaning of the phrase to her, but other times he would just sigh and tell her it was one of those things. She wasn't that. A thing. A thing could sleep on the floor and he wouldn't have cared. But she shouldn't sleep there, he thought. And what was novel became normal, and routine established that she would stay up for an hour or two before taking her place on the opposite side of the mattress, laid down on top of the sheets with no pillow as she didn't care for it. The initial awkwardness of sharing a bed dissolved quickly when Rubyn realized the whispering hum she emitted brought him to deeper sleep. Now, he welcomed her presence, and most nights they would spend uninterrupted in their rest together. Tonight she was early. Rubyn had barely begun to drift, though he was drifting, when her body shifted to face his. He opened his eyes, his vision drawn to two glowing white orbs staring back at him. Dawn was kneeling next to him on top of the bedsheets, watching him wordlessly. He squinted, the light a bit too bright in contrast to the dimly lit room, and wondered if she was examining the scar that ran from his forehead down to his right cheek, a gift left for him by his youthful idiot self, and was about to close his eyes again until she spoke.
Rubyn.
Her voice was flat, as it often was. She had been working on synthesizing a more natural speech cadence, but it didn't come easy for her, and even with adjustments she often sounded monotonous and bored. It was possible she was trying to whisper, though she wasn't good at that either. He modeled a whisper for her in return. "Yeah?" Her eyes flickered.
You are still awake.
Her voice dropped in volume slightly, and she had blended in a pink noise channel to emulate vocal fry, with some success. "I am now." He tried not to sound annoyed. He did anyway. "What's the problem?"
There is no problem.
Too much noise, he thought. Dial that one back a bit.
I have discovered something that I think would be of interest to you.
Oh no. Rubyn closed his eyes and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He couldn't fathom what she could possibly have found out that would be worthy of having this conversation at this time of night, but he was sure it was going to be a long conversation.
I think I want to have sex with you.
That wasn't what he expected at all. He dropped his hand and looked at her again. She was straight-faced, still meeting his eyes. Maybe this was an attempt at a joke, he wasn't sure yet. "You can't."
I know.
Her response was mercilessly straightforward. Rubyn was getting the impression he would be better equipped to duel to the death rather than talk this through. Still, he persisted. "Then, what makes you think you want that?"
I appreciate you.
That's not a very good reason. Her countenance shifted. Facial expressions were one thing she had managed to integrate into her systems fairly quickly after a period of trial and error. She used them sparingly but effectively. A slight frown was across her lips now.
What would be a good reason?
This was going to be a long night. Geez, I don't know. Something more than that? He sat upright, the bedsheet draped across his front like an apron. His hair, done up in a high and tight knot, was frizzy from the pillowcase. There's a lot that should be there first, before that kind of thing. She was not satisfied with that answer.
I think it is a very good reason.
Rubyn let out a long, tired breath. He was too drowsy to argue his points, and she didn't seem like she would let it go before speaking her piece, so he relented. "Okay, elaborate, please." Her frown softened.
We spend a lot of time together. You allowed me to stay here with you even though you didn't want to. You ask me about how my day is going and stay in touch with me as I go about it. You answer my questions even when you are annoyed by them. You refused to let me sleep on the floor.
She kept going before he could interject.
When I was in critical condition, you stayed to monitor my progress until I was in working order again. You acquired materials for my light forging project without my asking you to do so. You have been patient with me as I learn how to function better as a person. In short,
she concluded,
I believe that you care for me. I appreciate that.
Rubyn was dumbfounded. Words would rise to the top of his skull and then sink back into the void they came from. He had no idea how he was supposed to handle this situation outside of a blanket rejection, and he didn't want to say something that Dawn would latch onto and alter her behavior for, a situation that had occurred on more than one occasion. But what she had said played back in his mind on repeat, and he felt the weight behind the words pressing on him. I believe that you care for me. Of course he did, but not in the sense she was implying. He wanted her to be safe, to learn things, to adapt and change. He couldn't help but smile to himself when something finally clicked for her, a sense or an understanding that had evaded her, and with just the right crossing of signals and feedback and modulation and filtering, she would know something new. He had felt aimless before her, but now he had somebody who needed him, and his sense of purpose was slowly becoming clear. He tried desperately to find that clarity now in this moment, and failed.
I know that when people care for each other very deeply, they may use intimate contact as a method of reinforcing it. It can create a positive feedback loop that strengthens their relational bond.
Oh no, she was in the weeds with it now.
While our relational bond is strong, I believe it could be strengthened further.
Her lips curved upward into a faint smile.
I think there could be many benefits to doing so, for both of us.
Rubyn held up a hand to indicate for her to pause. She obliged. He suddenly became very aware of every part of his body that was not covered by the sheet as it fell off of his sternum and settled above his waistline. The air was comfortably warm, but as his chest and stomach became exposed, it felt like ice. The hair on his arms stood on end, and instinctively he crossed them, shielding his torso from sight. It occurred to him that Dawn slept in this bed every night, and she was likely accustomed to seeing him like this, and he relaxed a little. I think you're skipping over a lot of details. He knew he had to meet her where her head was at. Pertinent details. Your reasoning is sound, but you've jumped to a conclusion without considering the reality of it. Dawn's smile faded.
What have I not considered?
Sex is not just about strengthening a relationship. He could hear the words of his physical health teacher coming out of his mouth. It's a lot of different things, sometimes good things, sometimes very bad things. It's not something you should feel an obligation towards.
I do not feel obligated.
Okay, well, there's still a problem. Rubyn found he could not look her in the eyes and stared up at the ceiling as consolation. Physically, you can't participate.
I can.
Dawn's voice was short.
You know I can.
It disarmed him for a second, the shock of her accusation. He recovered. Right, but you can't. You won't. You don't get anything out of it.
That's fine. It is not necessary for both parties to achieve climax for the encounter to exhibit positive effects. In fact, many times only one...
Don't. He flushed a deep red and had to cover his face. You don't need... Dawn respected this request.
You know that it is possible.
Yes, he replied.
And you know that it is something I want to do.
Yes, she had made that very clear.
And I came to that conclusion on my own. You did not coerce me.
Yes. He wasn't sure how he would have been able to do so. She said nothing. Rubyn could feel her gaze on him. Was she examining him? Taking in his posture, his body language? Simulating 100 conversations to choose the one that would lead to the best outcome? Was she staring at his skin, so unlike hers in texture and warmth and imperfections, and the way it scattered the dim light beneath its surface, and the way it was vibrating imperceptibly with the rhythm of his circulatory system? He turned to meet her eyes, and for a moment, he felt as if he was looking into Vic's. In the way that he knew Dawn could read him in a glance, he saw something in her face that was uncannily human. In spite of her pupilless eyes, her vibrantly glowing sclera, her impossibly pale features, he saw it for a fleeting second before his brain corrected for the error, and she became a machine again.
I see.
She continued to stare. After a moment, her eyes flickered and she straightened herself upward.
You are correct. I have missed some key details.
She pulled herself off of the bed and stood up, stopping to fix the sheets she had disturbed on her side by doing so.
I apologize. Please go back to sleep.
Once again, he could not find the right words. Instead, they stared at each other for a few more seconds, maybe a quarter of a minute, before Rubyn laid back down, pulling the covers up onto himself. Dawn waited for him to do so, then silently lowered herself onto the bedroom floor, the whirring of her cooling systems fading gradually as her performance load dropped. As she entered maintenance, Rubyn felt something hard lodge itself in his stomach, and he had to grab at it with one hand to dull the sensation. All he could think about was that one moment, that look on her face, utterly convincing. He knew it was practiced, that she had to work hard for that one expression, that it was all a systemic process, a reaction to a reaction to a reaction to an impulse. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. But the more he thought about it as he drifted into sleep, the more he convinced himself that the look of quiet dejection on Dawn's face was genuine. And he was responsible. And it ate at him until his mind could take no more and blessed him with sleep. This has been an audio presentation of Feedback, part of an original short story compilation written and narrated by Scott McGowan. If you enjoyed the presentation, I would encourage you to please share it with someone who might like it as well. This is a one-man passion project, and I really appreciate that you took the time to listen. Make sure you subscribe to the show in the podcast player of your choice so that you get notified of future episodes. Bye now.